And as usual, we would like to thank the Indigenous people of Australia before we begin, as they are the original custodians of this land. We're here with Angelo Giuliano. He's a Swiss-Italian leftist.
Yes.
That's been quite prevalent in the Hong Kong debates. And Angelo, the reason I wanted to talk to you, or me and Reezy, it's because you've been taking a lot of flack in the last year or so, because people were saying, you're a communist spy, because you're a white dude that's been pretty much on the Chinese side. And as we said before, and we're speaking for a few minutes, you're not really that much of a hardliner left winger. Yeah.
No. My father was a communist, but I'm a strong supporter of communism, very strong supporter. But I think there's a cultural element to it, So communism might not work everywhere just because of the cultural element. So because I put non-interference above everything, I think it's very important not to do any interference. I think we should just respect each other. So, if the Americans wants to go that direction and Chinese want to be communists, I think we should respect, But I think I've learned lots of things about China and the way it's working. And I think it's the model. If you look at, because I think the capitalistic model is still experimental. And it's showing chaos, it's showing, it's about to collapse. And I think the problem right now we have in the world is that China is doing so well, it's going to be very difficult for the Western world to justify the model, because it's about failure. You can brainwash people so much into media, Hollywood and so on, telling people, well, we have freedom and so on. But you have food, you have a shelter. Why do you have homeless?
Definitely.
Why you have so big prisons when you call yourself the land of freedom? So we have lots of contradictions. But I think the West is doing a very good job in terms of PR and brainwashing.
Yeah, but China's not doing a very good job. Like, in America they might have this freedom, but it seems more like a freedom to die at the moment. Police are killing people. Lots of people in line trying to get food, while in China, it's much more secure, though you might not have the, as much, say, ability to speak out as in America.
I think it's very relative. I watch and I read the news in China, and you'd be amazed at the freedom of speech there is there, really.
Definitely. I've lived in China, and I've said horrible things about the government. Not horrible, negative. Like, I've criticized certain government policies, such as the Hukou divide that divides, the population, and I've never gotten in trouble for it or anything. Yeah.
No. I think that there are some limits. The limits are it's related to whenever you say something that can create chaos and instability. So and especially when it's fake news,
that's the difference.
But there are some limits, and it's a different culture. We are more like focusing on the individual, and they're more focusing on the group.
More community collectivist.
Yeah. So sometimes, in order to better look at China, we should have Chinese eyes. That's the problem. You see.
Yeah, definitely more Chinese voices. Yeah, that's actually curious, because you said your dad's a communist and you're from Switzerland. So is your background like Italio-Swiss, or like from South Switzerland? Whereabouts?
So I was born Italian from the south, and but we moved to Switzerland very early. So my father was one of the very large population immigrants that moved to Northern Europe. Like Switzerland, France, and Germany. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. So do you speak like 4 languages, or?
I speak actually 6 languages. So I lived in South America as well. So I spent a long time in Venezuela.
Yeah, I saw you on the newspaper. What was that about? You were like a revolutionary or something?
Not really. I was just following the elections. So when I did my trip in all around South America, I followed all the events. That's That's around in 2000, so almost like 20 years ago. So I followed the Chavez movement. I followed the mining riots in Bolivia. I followed the election also in Peru. So it was very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because that looked like a really old photograph, like when you were a bit younger. It was like it was an article of you holding a camera. I can't read Spanish, so I don't know what it says. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And now actually it's a story I haven't told many people about the story. It's a bit complicated. I was arrested. I was a citizen journalist, just taking pictures. But this back then there was not this, we didn't have the social media like today. So I was taking pictures, and they arrested me, and they constructed a story that I was from the.
Where was this?
That was in Mérida, Venezuela.
Oh, really?
And yes, and what they arrested me that day, and they said I was from the Secret Services pro Chavez, and it was all fake story. And but then it was because it's very sensitive.
What year was this? Which government arrested you? Like the Venezuela, the Chavez government, or the one going against him?
No, it was a regional police, but it was just for 1 hour. No, I mean very short time. But all the journalists were taking pictures of me, and they constructed a story that I was what we call from the DISIP, which is the Secret Services from Chavez.
So they said you were a Chavez spy. That's
exactly. So and then a few days later, I had to go back to the newspaper and say you'd better change this story because you get killed in Venezuela for something like this. So that's the story. It was just a funny story. I mean, but it tells you, it gives you some idea about how much fake news is out there.
Yeah.
Let's get back to that one. We talked before about sort of what speech is kind of allowed in China, and what I seem to have noticed is that imperialist fake news will not be allowed, and we've seen that with a couple of American journalists from the spokespeople of the military-industrial complex, like New York Times and Washington Post, being kicked out. But I noticed a lot of like European journalists are still allowed in China. In fact, they've been asked to go and visit places like Xinjiang.
Yes, but it's very important that you to look at the last measures of kicking out some Western journalists. It's about reciprocity. So what happens is that they kicked out journalists, Chinese journalists in the U.S., and then there was reciprocity from the Chinese side. Yeah. And so you can actually they can go to some areas like Xinjiang. It's possible.
Yeah, it is. It's not Tibet. Tibet's a lot more heavily guarded, but Xinjiang's you can totally go there. Yeah.
Exactly. As a tourist, it's much more difficult to go to Tibet than Xinjiang. Xinjiang, you can travel freely in Xinjiang, no problem. You can take pictures. There's absolutely no problem.
Yeah, and it's just so weird how like there was like, we can't get to access Xinjiang when you actually anyone can go to Xinjiang as long as you have a visa in China.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like they don't, especially when they talk about Chinese banning foreign journalists, Washington Post. They didn't talk about the fact that they first banned Chinese journalists from America.
Exactly.
It's like a tick for tack kind of move. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of got famous in China, and they drew that sort of this Mario looking photo of you, like cartoon.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So how come you decided to step out? Like it was last year when you sort of stepped out and had that viral video. Yeah.
I was honestly. I mean, whenever there's politics, and I'm in a foreign country, I don't want to interfere. I think I at the beginning I was like, okay, well, this is a Hong Kong issue. It's a Chinese issue. As a foreigner, I don't have a word to say.
Yeah.
But what happens that I saw clearly that NED and the CIA, the Americans were behind this, because I could see lots of because I had also experience in Venezuela, and I saw how they operated there in Venezuela. And when I was in Hong Kong, I saw very clearly what they did was to replicate the Maidan color revolution. what happened in Ukraine. And I was getting very worried. Now it's not a Chinese issue. There's interference from the U.S. and I saw all the brainwashing, and because of my experience, I was like, well, you know what? First of all, my place too. I've been in China for 25 years. It's my place. And then because I understood the situation, I thought it was very important for me to speak out, to tell them, well, you know what? You guys, I mean, especially to those kids, you are being manipulated.
Yeah.
And I was very angry at who was behind it, like all those evil adults, And I was so angry. I was like, well, we need to do something. And I saw it clearly. This is it's a proxy war between China and the U.S. and the Hong Kong pandemic movement are just pawns.
Yeah, I mean, most of those kids weren't even born when China, when the Hong Kong was part of the UK still, like under UK rule. So they don't even know what China was like what it was like before that. So they think that this is way worse than what it was before.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, can you blame those kids? Imagine you are born there. When you look at these history books, the history books are all anti-Chinese.
Yeah.
When you look at the media, all the media are anti-Chinese. When their teachers are financed, the teachers' unions are financed by NED. So the teachers are very anti-Chinese. So they live in a cocoon where from morning till evening, it's all anti-China. And they tell them, oh, you know what? How can I say, they romanticize the time when Hong Kong was a colony. They make them feel superior to mainland Chinese. So they tell them, you know what, you are Hong Kong.
Yeah. I mean, this feeling I got in Australia as well. Like when my parents are from mainland China, but whenever I met a Hong Kong kid from school, he had this sense of superiority, and he would say things like, "Oh, you're a cockroach, you're dirty, you're a communist." And the thing is, like, I had never lived in China before that until recently, and I just felt really weird. Why do you hate me when I barely talk to you? And he would just talk about like how his family's being oppressed in Hong Kong. And then I saw the actual curriculum, like the history books they taught. They were teaching Opium Wars in a neutral sense, as well as the Japanese invasions. And I was like, this is disgusting. No wonder they think of this like that. Yeah.
No, I feel bad for those kids. I mean, can you blame them? It's just the whole brainwashing, and it's how it works. Because I'm following. I don't know if you guys are following, but right now in Thailand they are actually replicating exactly what they did in Hong Kong. So they use emotional triggers. So emotional triggers are they make them watch movies and so on. They tell them, oh, you know what, you are going to lose your freedom. You have no future. And so on. But they don't come up with all the rationale behind, in terms of history, geopolitical.
Yeah.
What is a democracy, how a democracy works, and so on. And they do a lot of shortcuts. And that's the problem, and this is why I wanted to come out and just explain to them in a rational way what is behind this movement.
Yeah, definitely. Like, what about Belarus? Do you think that's similar as well?
Yes. It's a bit more complex in Belarus because Lukashenko actually at some point had an anti-Russia stance. So this is why Russia wants to help out, but it's not too keen right now. It's a bit more complicated, but I think it's easier to explain. I mean, Thailand is much more obvious.
It does seem like Lukashenko has been sort of playing the Americans and the Russians off against each other for the last for the last couple of years.
That's the problem, he's lost lots of credibility with Russia because he's playing the US and China and Russia against each other. But it's a color revolution, clearly. I mean, what they're trying to do, it's the whole movement. If you look at this Nexta TV, which is they have 2 million people Telegram, and they're monitoring the whole movement from Poland. And if you look at the people behind this Nexta channel,
Yeah.
There are people they've been, they have their Instagram like pictures, they've been to the US, Ukraine, and so on.
Yeah.
Clearly there's something, it's worth making some more research there. But
Very high quality photos.
Yeah, how long has this Naxtra been around for?
It's very recent. I mean, to my understanding, it's recent, but I need to do more research. It's a, and I think we got a bunch of people that we've been taken by surprise by those protests, but they were not. They were well planned. It's been planned in advance. They were not spontaneous.
Yeah, they say that Nexta, like some Belarusians have been tweeting that Nexta has been giving $300 to $400 for every striker. Do you think that's possible? Or? It's kind of like how they were paying Hong Kong strikers as well. Yeah.
Yes. In Hong Kong, there were some. They were paying strikers. You can see actually lots of actors. I don't know if you've seen. You have some strikers in factories. They go from one factory to another. So you have some actors, and that's what we found in Hong Kong. Maybe a hardcore of people, like 100 people, where you see them everywhere, absolutely everywhere. But it's about making more. I mean, studying more what is happening.
I mean,
and it's interesting. If you follow Thailand, it's exactly the same thing. Actually, it's really copy paste of what is happening in Hong Kong. Exactly the same.
The Thailand one, what's the impetus? What did they get out of doing this revolution in Thailand for America?
Okay, what happens is that in terms of geopolitical, what happens is that Thailand is siding with China. Mm-hmm. They signed the Belt and Road Initiative, and they have amazing projects. There's a Crack Canal, there's some very interesting project there in Thailand, and because lately Thailand has been siding with China, then at once, the king, they say the king is bad and so on, right?
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons. But if you follow the whole thing, it's I mean, the NED has been funding lots of movements there for a long time.
Yeah. I thought they would be very Americanized because there seems to be a lot of, connection with Thailand and America, a lot of tourism, a lot of investment, military bases. So I'm surprised that Thailand would even, pivot to China in the Belt and Road. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very surprising. But at the end of the day, this, you need to keep in mind that in the 70s, 80s, the militaries they were pro US, and they were back then there was absolutely no democracy in Thailand. You didn't have the freedom you have now. So people they are a bit smarter than in Thailand. They understand that before the US they were not. Why the US now wants to have a democracy in Thailand when in the 70s, 80s they didn't do anything while the junta was pro US.
So the military itself is not as pro-American as it once was then?
No, absolutely not. And right now, if you look at which country the US is going after in Eurasia, it's mainly related to whoever is signing the Belt and Road Initiative. The US is going to go after you.
Yeah.
Because they know, what is behind this is huge for China and for all Eurasia. It's a shift towards from US, Europe to Eurasia.
They even targeted my state premier. So just the Victoria state premier. He's not even like a world leader. He's just like a regional leader because he signed on to the Belt and Road. Like it sort of, and Pompeo.
Chairman Dan.
Yeah, Dan Andrews.
Yeah.
They've been targeting him.
So you saw also this in Myanmar. It's the same. Myanmar is the same. Myanmar is siding with China. So Aung San Suu Kyi, she was the goddess for the US, for the Americans. She was a queen, the Nobel Prize and so on. But then lately she's been siding with China. and she's been, they have a huge project with the Belt and Road Initiative, and then she's the evil dictator, doing genocide with the Rohingya. You can see the shift.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of actual direct messages from Burmese people telling me about the Rohingya thing, how the only reason it's being highlighted is because of the Belt and Road as well. So I didn't want to comment on it because I'm like, because it's a genocide, or as they try to paint it. But it seems like it's been going on for much longer, but it's only been put on the spotlight now, like the repression, just because of the Belt and Road.
Absolutely. I mean, they had lots of problems, and I think it's always important just to go back to the real history. The refugees going to Myanmar. It's always very complicated. It's a bit like Kosovo. Kosovo.
Yeah.
Kosovo was Serbian, and then you had lots of people like Albanians moving to Kosovo, and then they claim, oh, this is our land, and it's a bit similar with the Rohingya.
Or even like with, say, Uyghurs 1,000 years ago. Originally there were yellow people in that area. Then they came in. Yeah. It's always migrating around. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just going to say what the media is very selective on which how do you call it, sort of ethnic struggles in a city, depending on who the leaders of that country are aligned to at the time. Because they're perfectly happy to ignore
Palestine.
I know, Kashmir.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at the US. They've been bombing and killing, Muslims for 20 or 30 years, and now they're like, yeah, we really care about Uyghurs. That's the biggest bullshit I've ever heard. It's like anyone that's, who's a Muslim would just know this and be like, yeah, this guy's, the US making it up.
Yes, and the funny thing about Uyghurs, like Uyghurs terrorists, the first actually to name them terrorists were the Americans.
Yeah, and they put them in Guantanamo Bay.
Exactly, they were actually recruited in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and everywhere, and they were actually bombing. They've been bombing positions of Uyghurs in Syria. So the Americans actually, they were the first one to name them terrorists. But now they are they're coming up with a different story, and I mean, I'm glad. I mean, lately there's lots of debunking, and the real informations are coming out, but it's very difficult.
Yeah, but it's a very big lie, like, because there's definitely repression of Uyghurs going on, but they're like trying to make it such a big lie. Like, if you even try to debunk it, you look like a genocide denier, and you're painted as the worst person ever. It's like with Hong Kong. If you against Hong Kong, you're against human rights.
There's no nuance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's repression, of course. I mean, but you need to keep in mind, okay, well, what is the solution when there's terrorism?
Yeah.
How did the U.S. manage? I mean, the U.S., they made hundreds of thousands of people dead because they were bombing for the reason of terrorism. That in Xinjiang, they find they're trying to find a solution, and somehow, it's not too bad. I mean, the last 3-4 years, there's no more bombing, and I think we need to look at the scale. I think 1 million is just ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. And if you look at how they came up with those figures, it's just it comes from an interview of Uyghur people, which are probably for independence. Very biased. Only 8 people, and you extrapolate and you come up with 1 million people in prison. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I'm Hui Chinese, but even we have the same population, roughly around 10 million people, same as Uyghurs, around 10 million. Everyone in the Uyghur would notice, because it's very interconnected, very communal community still, very collectivized, like very, tight. So the fact that 1 in 10 Uyghurs are meant to be, putting in camps, that's just seemingly impossible just for myself. It's staggering. But they seem to think like the bigger the lie, the easier it is to get across. Now they're talking about incubators. Yeah.
It is exactly like this. Sometimes when the lie is so big, you think, oh, well, it must be true. And then the problem is that if you repeat so many times, well, it's people, it's just in the mainstream, and you don't question that. And if we want to go against those lies. It's very difficult. They've been hearing this for hundreds of times, and you come up with a new theory, and you don't have much time to explain. It would take some time because you need to debunk, and people don't have time. Because we are in a fast-paced society, and people don't dig.
The average person is the average person is not going to research the history of Western China to get a perspective on current events. Or even the recent history.
I put this post on Twitter the other day. I mean, you see how many people they watch a movie like 7 Years in Tibet, and overnight they are expert about Tibet. I've been 3 times in Tibet. I have met lots of Tibetologists. I mean, people like really expert in Tibet. They've done this for 30 years in their life, and they explained to me, well, Tibet, was everybody's calling about free Tibet, but who freed Tibet were the communists. In reality,
from feudal bureaucracy.
The Dalai Lama repression, and the whole slavery. So you see, the problem is that people, and you see that also about China. People they're like Adrian Zenz, easy an expert about China. Does he speak Chinese? No, I mean they are self-proclaimed experts. When it takes a long time. Even myself, after 25 years in China, I feel very humble. I still have a lot to learn. And you have those guys that overnight they claim themselves, I'm an expert. I'm an expert.
Yeah, it's like those people, they just spend like 10 minutes in an airport and an expert, or they watch John Oliver, that new thing, and they're all like messaging me. They're like, oh my god, the Muslims being killed. Do you know that? And I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I saw the John Oliver as well. Like, but you can't just believe everything that he says because he's John Oliver.
Yeah.
And he's not even funny, man. He's just like, he makes the same jokes, like Janice from accounting or something. I can't even remember.
Yeah. And the problem we have right now, I mean, you guys, you can see that. Well, the mainstream media is all anti-Chinese, but then even our voices, because we come up and we try to debunk everything that is being said, which is wrong. But right now, what they're doing is that they're changing the algorithm. They're blocking us. My Facebook blog is being blocked for 30 days, and now I don't know when I can keep on writing on my blog. My Twitter account has been shadow banned.
I could tell. Because you have like 3 Twitter accounts, and they keep getting suspended sometimes as well.
Yeah, so I can reach to the people that are following me, but I cannot reach to other people. It's very, very difficult. So you see, the problem is that they have all the tools, and for us, I mean, nobody wants to hear our story. It's very difficult, and the problem is that I think at some point we'll have to go from online to offline. I mean, if we go into a Cold War, I'm ready to go out and just and just and speak out, But the problem is that we have limits in what we can do. I thought we could battle on social media, and bringing like rational points, facts, but they don't give us that voice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really annoying because they keep talking like, look, they let you speak out freely, but it's really an illusion, a facade of this free speech. But they allow a few people to speak out and make them look like clowns and fools. Keep this idea of that this is a free society, but it's actually not. Yeah.
Yeah. And the problem, sometimes, it's very randomly that one can come out. I mean, Max Blumenthal, who is going to invite him in the mainstream media? It's going to be very difficult. But randomly, he might come out, like maybe 5 minutes. But before those 5 minutes, you had thousands of minutes saying the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So you are going to be labeled denier, like denier, like a Holocaust denier. How they put everybody in the same basket. You and very soon I think the Xinjiang issue, we are going to be denier. The same, be put in the same basket as Holocaust deniers. That's the problem.
It's just crazy because Max Blumenthal himself, he's Jewish, and he's being classed as a Holocaust denier. It's just totally unfairly slammed. Yeah.
Yeah. He's actually anti. He's for Palestine. You know, it's very interesting. It's the same as Noam Chomsky. You know, a lot of Jews that you know, they really understand the whole situation. They went against Israel because that is a real genocide. What is happening in Palestine?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
it's interesting. It's interesting. Donald Trump, that video. I don't know if it was yesterday or this morning, saying that the movement of the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that was for the evangelicals. It wasn't for Jewish Americans, you know.
Probably.
Jewish Americans seem to be much more skeptical of the Israeli project than the rest of American society.
Yes, that's what I've heard. They're not as radical as, and again, you know, it's very complex society in Israel. I think. I think there's a less radical movement in Israel that doesn't, you know, there's a silent majority in Israel that is, you know, wants to give some space for the Palestinians. I believe that, but you know, there's just the problem is that who has the, you know, people who have the power and have their hands on the media. That's the problem. Those are the radical.
Yeah, and that also raises another point, especially about the Uyghur stuff, because most of the officials in the Communist Party in Xinjiang are Uyghur themselves, especially the police, the military, the people teaching in the vocational centers are also Uyghur. So, like, if they're going to be committing a genocide on their own people, it just doesn't seem possible that Uyghurs would be trying to kill their own people.
You know, if only the Western people understood about how Chinese they look at their minorities. You know, minorities are the pride of Chinese people.
Yeah,
they love
100%.
minorities. They are so proud of their minorities. They're giving them more rights. You know, they never had the one-child policy. They have you know, there's a positive discrimination for when it's about studies, right?
Yeah, my cousins, they all get extra marks, which allows them to go past hundreds of thousands of dollar entrance examinees. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, well, only for I have to say, you know, for the Uyghur, when they travel, you know, they have more restrictions now. But we need to understand that, you know, there was some terrorism, and I think there might be some what we call the profiling, you know, ethnic profiling.
Yeah.
There's some, and you'll have a bit of racism, you know, very randomly, but not as bad as what we can find in the US or other places. You know, you always find like stupid people everywhere around the world. I mean, also in China, you know, just it's not perfect, you know. But I think overall, I think it's going to the right direction. You know, I like to use what we call 成语. You know, we say when 古之心, you know, and this is about when you're judging someone or country, and it's only a snapshot. I think it's very wrong. It's very wrong.
Yeah.
Because you need to understand the history, and you need to understand where that person or that country is going, and then you have a much better image of that country. And so in terms of when it comes to China, why am I so positive? Because I was there 25 years ago. And 25 years ago, it was not perfect, really. They had lots of problems. And I saw the whole trend and the direction it's going. And this is why I'm so positive and I'm so excited, really. You know, but if you looked at China 25 years ago, of course, they had, I mean, it would have been very fair to criticize China 25 years ago.
It's pretty much when Hong Kong returned, nearly, really roughly the same time. So Shenzhen, can you describe Shenzhen 25 years ago compared to now, compared to Hong Kong?
Oh my God, it was just nothing, absolutely nothing.
A village.
And even for me, I go to Shenzhen every 3 to 6 months, but every time I feel it, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. You know, I haven't been to Shanghai for 2 years now. I'm sure once I go back, I'll be shocked again. You know, society is changing very, very fast. I mean, it's not only the building, also the people, the mentality. So much happening, you know, it's changing much faster than here. So I think we need to give it time to China. But if you look at all the achievements Where in the world you had a country that had so many achievements, and I think this is almost like I can understand some countries to be very scared because look at the trend of the last 30 years, and they've been, and I think the US lately has been taken by surprise. I mean, overnight you see, you know what? Now China is the country issuing the most patent in the world.
Yeah.
And we thought that China was copying only. No. You have 5-6 times more engineers in China than in the US. So I think right now, the US is being taken by surprise, and they've been distracted by other things. They've been distracted by the fight against the Muslims. They wanted to control oil and so on in that area. And overnight they were like, oh, wait. But it's China. And China, what they've been doing is that they were focusing on the economy. China has been always, it's been focusing on China itself, the center of their world. They're not into expansion.
Yeah, they build like a Xiaokang, like, sort of a middle class, get everyone up.
Exactly.
They can have
a
house, some food, education.
China is a world in itself. This is why they don't want to expand. They don't want to, they want to focus on their population, and it's already so complex. So what they want is stability and grow and give prosperity to their people. I mean, this is in terms of a noble aim, this is an amazing aim. When you have a focus every day, the leaders of China, they have one focus is maintain sovereignty and brings prosperity to our people.
Yeah.
When you compare with the US, what is it? They're not thinking about their people. They're thinking about whoever elected me, I need to deliver. But who elected them were the people that paid for the campaigns. This is those are the people they need to be accountable to. So it's very different, and then you have the difference between the vision of short term and long term. Western society looking at election time 4 or 5 years, when in China they're planning for the next century.
Yeah.
And that makes a huge difference, really.
Definitely.
But at the end, you know what? I'm for non-interference. And I'm if they want to go into that direction, the other direction, I mean, that's fine for me. I respect. But I think, but going to war because you want to be to keep you being the hegemony, that is wrong. It's very wrong, and I see many problems, it's so complex. What we are going through, the decoupling and the alliances, it's becoming very, very complex, and everything is going faster and faster.
Yeah, because basically in the back there's like a trade war going on, and people don't really think about that. All they can see is in the front. They can see Hong Kong, they see Xinjiang, they see Thailand, they see Belarus. But there's actually a whole another sort of interconnected sort of political, diplomatic war going on that people don't know about, or they don't really pay attention to.
I think the trade war is not the real issue. I think this is like really small stuff. I think the main war is about the dollar. It's the dollar hegemony.
Petrodollar.
Petrodollar, exactly. What is happening is that because you have Russia, China, and Iran not trading to dollar, using dollar for trading, and they want to initiate a new trend. So what is happening is that once the dollar is not the world currency, I mean, it's going to be the USA collapse, because you see what they're doing right now. They're just printing. They need money.
Yeah.
And who's financing now? The US is just the world is financing the US.
Yeah.
But once the dollar becomes just a national currency, then you cannot print. Why? Because you create inflation. It's not sustainable. Yeah. So you can imagine now, and you can see the trend. The dollar is going down. The gold is going up. Cryptocurrency are going up. and it's showing clearly that the world is losing confidence in the US dollar and in America. And I think that the real fight is there. Because once they lose the dollar hegemony, then it's over for the US. It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's no, definitely. I agree. Like the trade war is also another sort of symptom of what's going on in the further background. It's so deep and complicated, the whole issue. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what do
But they have
you?
to start from somewhere. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. What's your main day job, if you don't mind me asking? Like in terms.
I do some trading. I'm a financial consultant. I do some PR for some large companies.
Yeah.
It's very mixed. It's very mixed.
Yeah.
But
As you said, you're
So
very moderate. Yeah.
yeah.
you sound like you're optimistic about China though, in both economically and socially, or
Yeah, I mean, complete overall, very optimistic, really, because in terms of politically, because it's a not how can I say fixed system. You know, it's constantly in reforms. There's a lot of they're always questioning what they're doing, and they're trying to. It's a constant improvement
yeah,
process. So it's not like we tend to think that all democracies are very flexible. It's not true, actually. China is much more flexible, and so I'm very positive on all aspects. The only thing is that the threat is going from outside. So China, one of the main problems is going to be, I think, energy. Energy. This is where China is very weak. Is the energy, the supply, and I think this is one of the reasons that they just signed an agreement with Iran. I think it's a period of 20 to 25 years. It's a 400 billion US dollar
Yeah.
agreement, and this is why China needs to secure its
Trade
the
routes
supply,
and
yeah, the
South
trade
China
route,
Sea. Yeah.
but also the oil,
Yeah.
access
yeah,
to oil. So this is why Venezuela and Iran are very essential for China.
Mm.
So decoupling is not so much a problem. You know, I think decoupling is going to hurt more at first the US than China, because China, I think, has already initiated the decoupling in a different way by that diversification. So if you look at market share, China has been taking lots of market shares in Southeast Asia, in Africa, in South America, and that was already a preparation for the decoupling.
And Africa
Uh,
as well, and Central Asia
exactly.
especially,
So
emerging economies.
if they lose some market shares in the US, it's not much a problem. The problem is for the US is that why are you going to buy what you were
yeah.
buying from China? What
Yeah,
is
and
the
And
their
we
supply
should
chain as well. It's
supply
China's
chain?
just supply chain. Yeah.
going to
You have to
say
change
the
supply
domestic
chain.
market in China itself as well can easily cover the 300 million customers that they may lose in America. You know,
Exactly.
if they grow that middle class in China, you know, there's a billion people there that can buy Chinese products.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
every person they pull out of poverty or they put into the middle class is a new customer.
Yes.
exactly. And I think when you know we tend to look at the bloc, US and Western bloc. I think in some ways they're slowly being more neutral. You know, they need to back the US, but I think with time they are going to be more and more neutral. I don't see them going all the way. Let's say if we had to go into a hot war, I don't see the whole NATO backing the US. I think would be
Now,
impossible.
Europe seems to be, especially with Iran as well. They're no longer fully on board with America as they were because they want access to those markets themselves as well.
Mm.
No,
So
absolutely. I think the Iran vote was the defining moment. Really, it was a huge
yes,
humiliation for the US. I don't know what they were expecting, but they've been working for a long time because it was very critical. That vote was so important for the US and for Israel. And if you look at, well, France and the UK, abstaining, being neutral on that vote. Well, that is very shocking.
Yeah, I just imagine Pompeo must be just very angry. I mean, they had the Dominican Republic. Was that the only country that voted for them?
Exactly. I mean, it's a huge humiliation. So I think, but then at the end, it's the same as Huawei and so on. Okay, they're not too happy, Europeans, to follow the US. They're doing against their will. But what's going to happen is that slowly there's going to be a shift, and I think countries are very pragmatic. You're going with the country that is the strongest. And if you look at history, World War II was exactly the same. At the end, they all sided with the US because the war was already won. I mean, Russia, USSR had won against the Germans, so everybody sided with the Allies. Well, it's the same in this situation right now. I mean, right now, it's still the US, which is stronger, and they need to still obey to the US. But but the way the US are managing those relationships, it's not very smart, because they're using sanctions and threats. If you have allies, that's not how you do it. So and you can see, I mean, a few countries, you can see Italy, partners like Italy, you can see clearly that they're being completely neutral right now, and it's a problem for the US.
Yeah, that is quite I saw quite a few very pro-Chinese Italian videos. I'm not sure if that was just because of the coronavirus period when the rest of Europe kind of abandoned them.
Yeah, well, it's funny, in Hong Kong we are like 4 or 5. All my Italian friends are all pro-Chinese,
Yeah.
And it's very funny. It's probably due also to the government we have. It's Cinque Stelle wants to get out of Europe. It's more like alternative thinking.
Italy's had a very long history with China as well in terms of like communication. I mean, during the Ming, there was Martino Martini, a lot of Italian Jesuits there. Yeah.
Yeah. So and you see, I mean, Italy didn't back the US for Huawei. So we are going to have Huawei in Italy. They signed the Belt and Road Initiative. They were neutral when it came to the UN petitions related to Hong Kong and the Xinjiang. So it's clearly a good sign, and we need countries like this that are going to be somehow mediator, more definitely. Neutral.
What about Switzerland? Or is Switzerland just be neutral forever?
Switzerland usually it's neutral. It just took a stance pro-US when it came to Hong Kong, but I think it's more because of information, ignorance, I would say. It's not easy to understand the whole situation of what happened in Hong Kong. If you jump into the Hong Kong issue without knowing exactly the actors, who's behind it, and what happened, it's not easy. So I would say that the position of the Swiss government about Hong Kong is related to ignorance, pure ignorance,
Yeah, I mean, not many people really know about China in that. Like, it's not very savvy about the Chinese situation or history, I would imagine.
No, it takes time, I mean, in what those politicians see. They see policemen beating protesters, rioters. But they don't see the rioters because the cameras are always focusing on the police. But they don't see like the other side, and I don't know if you saw that video when I was confronting the journalist in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I've been so frustrated because the journalists are always in front and they're protecting the rioters, and you have the rioters throwing petrol bombs while they are behind the journalists, and 90%, 80% of the journalists are actually rioters.
It's like what, $20 for a pass for journalists?
Exactly. You just buy a pass. It's so easy. It's one of the places in the world where you can become a journalist overnight. And sometimes you have kids like 13, 14 year old kids.
I saw. Yeah.
You know, and because they have a blog, they have a YouTube channel. Oh, that's it. I'm a journalist, and so it's funny right now. If you go to Hong Kong, sometimes they have events. They call it lunchtime events. Sing with me, and you have 1 or 2 protesters, and you have 50 journalists.
Yes, I've been retweeting a lot of those. It's just like there's always more because they've lost a lot of funding, so it's gone back a lot. So honestly, Angelo, thank you for coming on, and you've been really insightful because you seem to have a wealth of experience. Yeah,
it's a great perspective as well.
There's so much to talk, you know, so much happening, but I think it's I mean, right now this is a critical time. We need to go out and speak up.
英雄花间意，歌曲人影稀。谁知明日是非，台上望珍惜。唱一曲别离，谁在君怀里？昨日相依，今夜又相离，各领笑泪滴。一出悲喜，众里佳人老矣。为戏武林英雄美人在交替，笑谈千年。